Welcome to Podcast IRC, conversations with Indigenous scholars to advance understandings and gain new knowledge, hosted by the Indigenous Research Center at Salish Syulm College. So that's what you call a Syulm, and the Syulm was a dance, I suppose you could say, or I guess more like a celebration of the victory of the warriors when they returned from I guess a great battle, or maybe even just a great hunting party, I guess. And so the women would dress up into the man's their clothing, so something maybe they wore in battle, their war shirts, and they'd carry around their weapons that they used in battle, and these women would dance to really celebrate and honor the victory of the man. But it really was a time, a dance really specific to females only, and it was a time for them to really show off their the deeds of the man, I guess. I don't know. It seems kind of one-sided, but really it's kind of one of the only dances like this where it was exclusively the females dancing. And that song there, that first song that you heard there, was a man would be singing that song going around the camp, and the early ethnographers who came over to this area, they called it the borrowing wives song. And that I guess that term, if you're not familiar with the ways of the people here, I guess you could kind of get confused by what that might mean. But really, what and essentially he's doing is asking families to loan their daughters and wives, or their grandmothers or whatever, so that they can perform this or do this Syulm is called. And so then they would dance around with the things that they received in war and battles, and in some of these cases it would be the scalps of their enemies. And even the anthropologists and the ethnographers who came over mistaken this dance and called it the scalp dance. And so it's more familiar to people when you hear the word scalp dance, but we've been trying to change that to bring back the original word, which is just the Syulm, which just means to dance in a circle. Cool, huh?
Don't everybody all jump in at one time.
Yeah. Wow, scalps, huh? Tell me more.
So this, since nobody wants to talk, what are the words in that song? Because she's saying words. What are the words?
Let's see. She's saying, let me borrow your let me borrow your wife. She says, we're gonna dance the this Syulm, and then it just repeats. Hukukutlnti to like your, let me borrow your daughters. We're gonna dance the Syulm. So it just keeps repeating that different names for the different females who he would be calling to dance.
So just to be clear on the the borrowing part, I guess that's what I'm stuck on. So, but that's more in like borrowing women from the community to celebrate in this honor of a harvest or a war success or things like that, right? Borrowed just for the intensive purposes for like that, like honoring that event. Okay, yeah. Which I understand, kind of what you were mentioning, to clarify what that exactly means. Because otherwise it can be taken really weird.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I kind of wanted to bring up today, was how we can be misinterpreted, and so I mean, like anything, if we go to a different country and we're trying to describe what we see, or somebody's trying to describe to us what it is in through two different languages, then we can kind of get things mixed up a little bit. So that idea of borrowing somebody's wife, in English it don't sound that good,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't. I mean, let's not glorify the English language too much. It doesn't sound any more irrational than anything else that's talked about.
The glory of the English language. Well,
you're like,
certainly.
I know in English it sounds bad. It's like, come on, we grew up during Jerry Springer. This doesn't sound bad at all.
I think it sounds amazing, honestly, because it's like, as let's just thinking about like the processes of all of this taking place, so I'm like kind of a fantasizer. So I'm like kind of trying to think of like what's happening. Right. So it's like the song and the whole ceremony and whatnot is dedicated to women celebrating men. Correct. Is that what's going on? And so they're going and borrowing different things from different warriors. Is that kind of like what's going on here? I mean, just to get like the overall picture of like what's actually happening. Or does somebody want to explain that to me? Because as I'm like thinking about this lady, she's singing her songs, and then it's like specifically for what, to celebrate and to honor. But I don't know.
Well, I mean, Shondine be the one to ask, but I'm going to talk.
Let's hear it.
You have to remember that the Salish people also follow what anthropology is always called the Plains War tradition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying anthropologists set that standard, but it's also the idea of that the warrior themselves, the person with the accomplishment, can't brag upon the accomplishment himself. So he looks to others to do that for him, and typically it starts with his wife, then his sisters, his mothers, right? Mm-hmm. And so those people come in and they brag upon that person, because in a matrilineal society, it's always the women that will do that job for you.
Mm-hmm.
So by doing that, so we always say we praise in several ways. There's singing, prayer, the physical act of praising. So you can do that with the wearing the adornments of the male, of the achiever, right? So the things he's bragging about, the person will wear those things. So you could wear like war shields. You could, in fact, I think, Shondine, there's a picture of it, right? Of this dance, and a woman is wearing a shield, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and typically they'll wear the men's attire. You can wear a war bonnet, but in fact, you can even hold the things the person brought home from war. So in the old days, you could say like a stolen weapon, or even medicine objects that were stolen or captured. Mm-hmm. and it's a way of getting that the community to brag upon it. Because remember, tribal people during this time, they believe that the greatest act of spiritual power is to test yourself in battle. So when you're tested in battle, that doesn't just mean you're a great warrior, it deems you spiritually potent. So people want to be around that person or people, that group that are spiritually potent. Because we believe spiritual power to be like you can almost rub it, like you can touch it, right? My grandma tells stories about when men would come home from World War I or World War II, her mom and dad would say, now go to the train station and touch them. And so they'd get off the train, and all the women and the kids would run up to those men who came home unharmed, and they would touch them because we believed them to be spiritually strong, right? So these gatherings were a way for people to gain the benefits of that. The telling of war deeds was a big part of these kinds of things. Am I right, Shandine? I know I'm talking too much now, but
No, you're right on the money. And I think when we talk about it in general, we often maybe it's back to English. We use the wrong words to try to convey what it is, because it's the women celebrating the victory of the man, but really it's far deeper than that. It's like what Aaron was saying. It's more following through with this value of really being humble, and not just like today where you say you're humble on Facebook because you want to brag about being humble. Facebook humble, social media humble, and you say you're humble followed by all the things that you've accomplished. That's not really the way it works. But so it's a one piece of a larger puzzle of really a human need, right? We need to be recognized for the things we do, but we're not going to go out and say, I did these things, recognize me. It's part of this larger structure of this life back in these days where, the men have a role that's to put themselves in danger. The women also have that same role. And in this particular dance, the Syulm, there was the women warriors would also participate, and they would be deemed the most fearless ones. They were called the fearless ones, and they'd dress up like clowns. So they'd darken their faces. They'd wear crazy things, and they were the only ones allowed to run around anywhere they want during this.
Did we just lose Shandine?
Oh, hello.
I think we lost. We have a man down. We have a man down.
The captain is out.
Have you ever watched?
God.
Have you ever watched? So I Married an Axe Murderer.
No.
No one's ever watched that.
No.
Well, he's a guy playing a guy's playing the bagpipe, and he plays it too long, and he falls. He falls down, he collapses, and he says, "A piper is down." So Shandine was our piper.
Back, I think.
Is he back?
Yeah, where'd you go, man?
Oh, no, yep. Where'd you guys go? Where'd you guys go?
We were here,
I had this most beautiful explanation of everything.
You figured it all out.
We're gonna have some righteous dude gonna listen and say, "See, they shouldn't have been talking about that stuff."
Yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens.
You guys know it. You guys already know that person too. As soon as I said that, you pictured somebody, and you're like, "Oh yeah, they're gonna say it." Selena's laughing.
It's true. It's true. But I think we also got to think about the listeners that are not that in tune into that intense, So got to keep it balanced.
There's a lot to explain about this Syulm, and we could commit probably a good couple episodes on it, because it's very complex, but to describe it in very small terms is kind of difficult to do. But really, it's about a value of humility and a value of just appeasing a natural human need, which is to be recognized for something good that you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's also important too to realize that this war society genre of music and dance is like it's standalone a lot of times to the other things going on among the tribes. So And for
Yeah.
some reason, in Indian country, this genre of celebration died like rapidly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We look at other forms of either ways of worship or celebration, and we were managed to keep elements of it, but this kind of form of like authentic forms of like recognizing deed, it just
Yeah.
seemed to like die out. And so Sean Dean actually was part of a group that had brought it back, which was pretty cool. And so when the Arlie boys won state, they
Yeah.
had this dance. And you were saying this, what the time you guys did it was
Yeah.
the first time it was done in like how long?
Probably about 100, 110 years or so,
No
approximately.
kidding.
Yeah, if you think back to when the last real war deeds were done, and the old warriors who were still alive, and the people who still knew the songs, and the crowd that they could pull in. Yeah, it was quite a ways back, 100
Did
years
they
ago.
did they call that the snake dance? Is that another thing that they call it, or is that something different?
No,
Don't
that's
when
something
they
different.
move,
Yeah.
that's something different. Oh, because I thought the way and the
Yeah.
pattern that they move had something to do with that. But
No,
oh,
this is the women dancing in a circle, and the men, 3 or 4 or 5 men stand on the outside and sing the songs. And Aaron was mentioning that when was it World War I or World War II veterans came back, he was told to go touch those men. The same thing would happen in this Syulm. The women would be getting worked up in their dancing, and one of them would run out and grab one of the warriors who they considered to be the bravest one, and they'd drag him to the middle, and all the women would jump in and they'd want to kind of grab him and touch him like that, and they wouldn't release him until that warrior gifted that lady, or someone from the family came out and gifted that lady. And in that time, all the women, or the woman who grabbed him, would sing these other particular songs to praise that guy for his deeds. And then only at that time can that guy recount his war deeds. Then he'll tell what he did, the deeds he accomplished in his life or at that particular battle. And there was really only one other instance where a guy could really talk about his deeds in that way, and this was one of them.
That's cool.
it's way cool.
I've always been fascinated with the telling of war deeds. I've always been fascinated because the Crows, we do something real similar, and this dance is called the large consecration dance. They also call it the telling of deeds, and it's the same idea. The women dance around the warrior. They kind of get in a frenzy. They paint their face with black dots.
And that's why we have the modern powwow today. No, I'm just kidding.
You dropped
dropped
out and then
out.
you came in. You were talking about a powwow and Aaron's talking about war deeds.
I just said that just to goof around because I knew I would dropped out.
Oh, weird. Okay.
And that's why they
Sorry.
have the Jocko store.
Quit it.
And that's why they call it Salish Kootenai College. No, but what it reminds me of is this idea that gets pushed on us, just like we talked about last week about this positive stereotypes, right? So you hear this, and you've heard it all, that natives, Indians, American Indians are metaphorical. We talk in metaphors, or we learn best by a metaphor. You heard that, right, Aaron?
Oh man, yeah.
Let's get a sound off. Marty, have you heard that? Visiting scholar Marty?
Yeah, I believe I have heard that.
There we go. Brenda.
Don't get me started. Don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard
Kamia.
it.
Yes, Kamia has heard the metaphor.
Of course, like I teach literature, and so that's a huge
She's a
deal.
living metaphor.
It's her world.
Yeah,
That's
for
my world. Yeah. And Salena, I know our other visiting scholar, Salena Hill, recent graduate of University of Montana, doctorate, Dr. Salena Hill in Counselor education, right?
Yes, in
Oh yeah,
counselor
Lulu.
education.
Marty Lulu.
Is Marty
Hey,
Lulu?
Lulu.
Yeah. Speaking of the telling of deeds.
Yeah. The metaphor,
And it's kind of
Salena.
yes, and it's kind of ironic that you're talking about this because that's what I'm writing about right now is using a metaphor to explain my findings, which is
Yeah.
recommended by some of the scholars in Indigenous research
Yeah.
methodology.
It
So
is. It is.
I almost said something negative, but I'm not going to
well,
now.
that's I
Well, tell us
appreciate
more,
that
Salena.
because I think that when you start doing this stuff in academics and academia, you get lots of mixed messages and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to find a balance to what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. And so just for it to come up in the midst of me finishing up my metaphor is interesting to me because you know how I'm going to say a metaphor, everything happens for a reason and when it's supposed to. And so I just find it interesting that this topic just came up as I finished writing about that. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear more of what my fellow Indigenous people think about that.
Yeah. Sarah, you've heard the metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Myth?
Yes, sir.
What is it a myth? Is it really? Do we talk in metaphors?
Or learn by them. Isn't that what you originally said?
Do we learn do we learn and or talk? Okay, so I remember this show. There's this show. It's called Dream Keepers. You've all seen it, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Now that one is just
Heard of
rank
it.
with metaphor. Rank with metaphor.
Wait, what show again?
And
Say it again.
Dream Keepers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So yeah, so you know they're constantly talking. You know, like okay, yeah, you talk like you're a leaf in the wind, or you're blowing around like a tumbleweed. You're confused, like dust blowing into the river, or flowing down. You know that kind of talk.
You're
Right?
painting with the colors of the wind again.
Yeah. My ears
How
are
high?
Gosh.
How high will the sycamore grow?
Ugh.
on the
If
wings.
you cut it down, then you'll never know.
The winged creature
Is that on
flieth.
Pocahontas?
Yeah.
Pocahontas?
Yeah.
Sick.
So-
Sick.
But I guess so. So this is why I wanted to show you guys this song because it kind of is like a metaphor in a way, right? So you're borrowing wives, but
Hello.
in English it sounds like okay, yeah. I don't mean it literally. I mean it metaphorically, so we can do this thing. So really, I'm not sure where this idea comes from because if you're a student of the language of your indigenous language, things are pretty straightforward. You know, I think it's there's not a lot of talking around things or you know painting this really vivid picture by using is it adjectives? Am I using that right, Camille? Adjectives?
Yeah, that'll work.
I don't know. Adjectives, you know, overuse of adjectives. I don't know. So I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that? I want to
Well, I
know.
mean, there's a real obvious example for the Crow people, and it is pretty much a metaphor where the scout leaders of war groups would be called wolves. So that their name for that scout leader is literally a metaphor. They just call him wolf. Any thoughts on that?
Well,
I think that's more of a mistranslation though, Marty.
Okay, edit that part out.
Which is why this program's so great.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have been quiet. My bad.
what does it really mean?
Good,
then?
yeah,
Okay,
I think that's a good point
let's hear it.
because
So cheda in Crow means wolf, cheda. But the word for scout is cheetda, which means to like sneak up on something. Because you say chija to like seek it out. Chijilia means to go and seek something out. Cheetda is someone who does that.
Mhm.
So in the old days, ethnographers would hear the word cheetah, and they thought they were saying cheda, which means wolf.
Mm-hmm.
They zigged when they should have zagged.
Zigged when they should have zagged. Yeah. What were you going to say, Selena?
Oh,
Yeah, Selena.
Yes, Selena.
Jeez, Aaron.
That was interesting, Aaron. But what were you going to say, Selena?
No, I was just going to ask a question or make a comment, because I think I'm not a fluent speaker of the Crow language, and so sometimes the way we just like the example that Aaron just talked about, like the way you hear something, you think of it one way, but there's just a distinct little change in a word and it means a whole different thing. And so I don't know, I think that's a common thing that happens. What Marty just gave us an example of him saying something and then being corrected because that's not what the interpret. Well, no, I don't mean it in a. I don't
sorry,
mean it
Marty,
in a bad
I'm
way.
sorry.
I don't mean it in a bad way because
we were texting each other.
I think that happens a lot, I guess, is what I'm saying. And it also brings me back to the interpretation of, or the translation of the dance that happens as a scalp dance. I just kept thinking, how the heck did it get, like how did it get so twisted that it then turned into a scalp dance when that's not even. So I don't know. I was just, those were just my observations. I think things like that happen a lot.
Yeah. The gruesome howling of the scalp dancers. That's a common description,
Yeah.
When really they're celebrating the fact that they survived, and they just want to be acknowledging the folks that are doing good things. I mean, we do that today. It's called Employee of the Week or Employee of the Month. I don't know. A little different, but kind of the same thing.
Student achiever.
Yeah. So this idea of this metaphorical talk, I think it's, I don't know. I'm indifferent. I don't think it's the Disney version, the Pocahontas version, but I do think there's something in between. I remember just kind of hanging out one time with a particular individual. I'll leave the names out just for anonymity. But we were getting this lecture about how natives are and how natives will take days and days to describe something, and just to see if you have the wherewithal. Yeah, the wherewithal to receive this knowledge. And this other gentleman I'm with, like I said, I'm going to leave the names out. He's an older gentleman, grew up in the old ways, raised by his grandparents. And he looked at me and says, "That's not the way I talk. I just get right to the point." So here we have these varying versions of us, certain experts in academia saying, this is how you got to do it. You have to talk in metaphor. You want to, in a way, they're saying you want to make people struggle to understand you. And if they want to know, they'll keep at it and keep on the struggle to know what you're trying to tell them. And I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily true.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Now I want to hear what anybody else has to say about that. I want to argue. Let's do it.
I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to argue. Either you all agree or you don't want to argue with me. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to argue.
Well,
I just want to know some thoughts.
Yeah, maybe. So maybe there's a time and a place for the use of metaphors. And so I can think of an example like, I don't know, as a kid and the things that I was taught, or like when you're trying to teach your own kids, like you don't necessarily share, an exact like literal meaning of something, but put it in a perspective that they can understand. So if you're trying to teach like, the value of respecting other living beings and other creatures and stuff, you can relate it to a point where the kids sort of understand that moral that you're trying to convey. And I think, you know, as someone who's also trying to convey kind of dense topics, like, you know, related to what I study with owl habitat and trying to describe some of those things, like using metaphors can actually be a really valuable tool in some cases.
Right.
But by no means do all Native people use metaphors all the time, nor do we rely
and
on
I don't
it.
think you mean, Sarah, you don't mean necessarily like when you use metaphors, you're not using kind of this romanticism, this romantic kind of form of Native metaphor.
Yeah,
you're not talking like that, are you?
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to assume. I would hate to assume.
Yeah. We don't want to do that. You know, I get it because I just when you were saying that, I was thinking about my own interaction with my children, and you know, if they just go out of their way to smash some little bug for no good reason, I said, what the heck you do that for? You want somebody to step on you? That's, I guess that's kind of a metaphor. I don't know. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. I literally said that to my kids last week.
Yeah. How about I step on you? How about I step on your iPad?
That would
you like it if a giant came and stepped on you just because it's satisfying?
Yeah, right.
Go find me a giant.
Yeah. Do that first.
I'm curious to know with Salena. She said she's been writing about this idea of like metaphor and methods. Can you give us an example of maybe something like that, Salena? Like something that you've seen, kind of the experts in Indigenous research, kind of present as metaphor, or how to use metaphor and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about how I used it. I can't really talk about like what the experts how they're using it, because I don't know who the experts are. I think there's still a lot of opinion on who the who the experts in Indigenous research methodology are. But the way that I've been using it is to describe my findings. I took the teepee, the crow teepee, the story of how Yellow Leggins was gifted the teepee, what he went through to do that, and then also, I guess, all of the symbolisms in the poles and in the flaps and all, all of that, and I associated it with my findings in my research, just to kind of, I guess, link that. I think I used it for two purposes. One was because it was recommended, but two was because then it helped me find more meaning in the meaning that I found, I guess. I don't even know if that makes sense, because it kind of sounds, when you talk about it, it sounds really cheesy. And I hesitate. It's funny because I wrote about it and I feel confident about what I wrote. And then when I go to talk about it, I get all nervous, like, oh, am I romanticizing the idea of our teepee? I didn't make anything up. I went to our story, or I went to Little Bighorn College's website and looked at, Dale Oldhorn and Tim McCleary's description. And so it's not like I don't feel like I romanticized it, but at the same time, was it necessary in explaining my findings, I think is the question I have as I did it. And part of me wants to say yes, but I think that part is because I just got done doing it. It was a lot of work. But the other part of me,
you got to do it all over now. I'm sorry, that's not going to work.
I'm not going to do it all over. But the other part of me thinks, yeah, it does make sense to use something from our culture to explain your research, because even if I just say to Indian people, the symbolism, or to Crow people specifically, the symbolism of the poles connects to the student experience. Like, even just like giving, if that was all I were to say, they at least would be like, oh, the poles, okay, that, there's connections there that happen, if you know there's symbolism in the teepee. Like, when I started using the metaphor, I didn't even know what the only thing I knew about our teepee is that it had to be facing east, right? And it was in the stories that I read about what each of those poles symbolizes and how it was gifted to yellow leggings and what the stakes stand for. Like all of that stuff was helping me learn pieces of my culture that I knew existed. Like I knew that knowledge was there, but I didn't ever seek it out until I did this process. And then when I sought it out and connected it to something that I was already learning, like I'll never forget that right now. I'll be able to share that with my kids. I'll be able to share that with my grandkids. And so I think when you think about the complete process of that, metaphors in that sense are important. But when you think about me standing up with this image of this painted teepee with smoke coming out of it, and me like even just the way I change my voice, if I add any of that stuff to it, then it's cheesy.
Mhm.
And it's almost how would you say, what's the word, exploitive?
Exploitive?
It's exploitive
Yeah.
at that point.
Mhm.
And so trying to find that balance of using a metaphor and trying to find that balance, I think, is where I'm at right now. Now that I'm ready to present on my research, it's like, oh crap, okay, I got to think about how this is actually gonna come across and how am I gonna present it. So those were just a few thoughts that were going through my head as we were talking about.
Here's a sidebar. Here's a sidebar curveball, Salena.
Okay.
So you said you used yellow leggings. So which teepee, which lodge?
Ooh,
Ooh, dun dun.
Because
he gets two.
He was given 4.
Oh, okay. So the source that I used did not specify. I don't believe. I'd have to go back and look at it. Yeah, and I think that's the other part of learning this is there's a lot there. I wrote in my culture and identity piece that being Crow, it's something that it's a learning process that you do throughout your lifetime, right? Because it's not like I'm born and I'm enrolled and I'm Crow and now I know everything, right?
That
It's
would
like
be nice. that would have made my
The
life
transcripts right there in your brain.
right? It would make my life a lot
Automatic.
easier too. But just presenting that question, like, how would I even know from this point on that he was gifted 4 different lodges and they probably all had different purposes, I imagine. Now I'm going to go seek that information. But I don't know.
While you're doing that, you'll find it interesting too that the Hiratsa story of the Earth Lodge is the same story that the Crows have for the teepee.
That is interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a tough one. We have what we have right now, and it's we can be, I don't know, where there's the danger every time we put something to paper, every time we describe something, there's a danger in us misinterpreting, or people misinterpreting what we say, and us really just doing that to appease the thing that we're trying to achieve. In this case, trying to get an education, trying to get a degree. So to what extent do we just say, all right, yeah, I can do that, and people are going to smile and they're going to love it. They're going to love the allegory. Is that right? What's an allegory? Camia, what's allegory?
And it's an extended metaphor. So yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Wow.
Camia.
I love we need like a index for
Right.
podcast.
Yeah, glad we can help with that.
Write that down. Yeah, allegory. So it sounds good, man. It sounds cool, when you can say, yeah, this thing I did is related to this very visually cultural thing. And since there's really not a lot of experts in academia right now, we can get away with a lot of stuff, man. We can we can go
That's
crazy
the danger
on it.
of it. That's the danger of it. Recently there was an article written about that exhibit in Chicago, and it referred to me as an expert, that I was an expert. I was like,
Dun dun dun.
I immediately panicked. Like I panicked.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
I panicked for you too.
Yeah. Did you read it?
I did, yeah. And it was a really good article. And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh man, he's going to get
Oh,
smoke for this.
Yeah, I
dang.
panicked. I was like, I am not an expert. I don't feel comfortable being an expert.
Did you contact them and ask them to change it?
Well, they're students, so it's kind of a weird
Oh,
thing. I guess my sister had said if you want edits, you have to contact the head of that. What is it? What was it under the?
If Native News Project.
Yeah, Native News Project. You don't go to the
Oh, okay.
student directly, and
Hmm.
I mean, and it was a great article, but again, these articles too that are written by good journalists, not just this one I'm talking about, but all kinds, they also perpetuate this idea of romanticism or metaphoric speak. Some of these articles are kind of littered with that, even if it's
Yeah.
not something
You just
that
used the metaphor littered.
littered. Yeah. I'm just
Keep
trying
going. Sorry.
to sound assimilated.
Littered with allegory.
Littered with allegory and innuendo. Every
Yeah.
time I hear allegory, I think of Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh. What is that?
It's an allegory.
It's an,
It's an
What?
allegory.
it's an
What?
epic.
It's an
Is
epic.
that different?
I thought
Yep.
there was a character on Lord of the Rings.
Oh no, the allegory of the cave. I think of the cave. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, the allegory
Yep.
of the cave.
Yep.
I'm
Right.
sorry. Same class though.
Okay. This
okay,
is not
so
the Lord of the
can I
Rings
bring us back
podcast.
home? Yeah,
Yeah, let's do it.
wrapping back around. So I understand and agree that there is some danger in what we're talking about right now, but in what case would it be justified? And I'm trying to think for Salena's example that she shared. I mean, first it connected her back in, I think, a profound and important way, right? And then also it might lead to other folks reconnecting. I don't know. Is that one justification?
Well, I mean, I keep thinking about like the use of a metaphor, and what we're trying to do is explain what something means, like the significance of it. So, like, if you point to something and you say, there it is, a person can look at whatever that is and say, okay, yeah, that is. But what do I do with it? Or what does it mean? What's the importance? And so then you can compare it to something else. And I think that will supply that. It gives you a perspective, right? A way to understand whatever the meaning is. So I don't know. It seems to me like the examples that we're talking about as scalp dance, that to me shows that, that translator or whoever called it that, it showed their perspective. It showed what they were paying attention to. It showed how they were understanding it. And yeah, I mean, it says we're talking about how the person who was looking at it from the outside had a really different understanding of the people who were doing it. So, I mean, yeah, it can be misinterpreted or it can be misapplied, but it does have a use. It can be, it can be the thing that will allow you to understand something. I mean, I like the example that you're using about your research, just because I think that you have probably gathered together so much information, and there is this wealth of knowledge, and you're trying to present it to somebody in a way that they can get something out of it. So just kind of like, all right, here, just look at this thing. Think of a teepee. A teepee is something you can imagine. It's concrete. It, is familiar. And so then, all right, this is how this research, this is how these pieces of information would fit into that model. It can be, kind of this tool to understand, right? It's just that, that overuse or misuse, the idea that that's what you have to do, that bothers me because it doesn't seem to be authentic anymore. It's like, okay, play a part, you know,
Yeah.
do this thing not in the service
Check a
of
box.
helping somebody. Yeah. Do this because I expect you to do this, not do this because it's going to help me understand.
Mhm.
I already understand what I want to, or my perspective is that I see you in a certain way. So now you have to do this to affirm that. And it doesn't have anything to do with what you're trying to say, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does to me. I think, I think, it has its place, as a tool to help someone understand more deeply something that you're talking about. But it seems like it has to be something that is familiar to the audience in which you're addressing it to.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it seems, I seem to get lost. I can't find a reason why some things are described in a deeply indigenous way when maybe the intended audience doesn't quite, or maybe I don't quite get this indigenous concept that they're talking about, or maybe that connection is lacking. I think that's where I kind of start getting an issue, when it seems like it's something I know about, but not really. So how useful is it? But then again, you can't meet everybody's expectations, I guess. Otherwise, what are you going to do, Cripes? We can't have a metaphor to meet a global audience.
Mm-hmm. Or like trying to translate in millions of different languages.
Sure.
It's hard
let's listen.
being Indian.
Yeah, especially when the rent's due, right? Guys giggling around in your
I have a
rent's
job
late.
like a regular American.
Settle down, Marty. Settle on down. Let's listen to this next song, and we'll continue this conversation. You guys ready? Let's do it. Yeah, so part of this Syulm, there was really three parts to this Syulm, and this would last 3-4 days, the whole thing, and the different parts were the split between kind of the time periods of the day and the night. And the daytime Syulm was just for the women to partake in. So the warriors could recount their deeds, or they could celebrate the deeds of the warriors. And then there's a period where they kind of broke up and were getting prepared again for the nighttime Syulm. And during this time period, and this is what people around here are more accustomed to seeing, is this breaking up period, is where the men and women would line up facing each other, and they'd kind of dance toward each other back and forth. The men would approach the women, and then the men would back up, and then the women would dance toward the men, and they'd back up. And when they'd get really close together, the witnesses watching this Syulm would be kind of getting into a frenzy, kind of a fun time, I guess, for everybody in a way. But a woman and a man could get married at this time. So if the woman decided to put her stick that she was carrying on a man's shoulder And if he didn't brush it off, then they were kind of considered married after that time. And after this kind of they call it the syntadase, like the bodies meeting. That's kind of what the word means. Then they'd go back into the nighttime Syulm. And this one, men and women, they can all dance together in a circle. And they'd go around to the different camps and they'd be singing these songs like you heard just now to celebrate the victory of whatever they had accomplished. But it brings up another metaphor that often gets used a lot. And that the metaphor of a circle, right? I mean, we've all heard this. I was just diving into some research recently on the idea of the talking circle, trying to trace back to where this idea first started coming from. But a lot of the text you read, reference natives as circular thinkers, kind of what we talked about last time, but also talking about the circle as being this really powerful symbol that's a reoccurring theme in Indigenous worldview. And I'm sure you guys have all heard that. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's my way to engage you guys into my conversation. Because I was on a roll there, and I realized
I don't have the stick, so I didn't know if I could talk or not.
Oh, the talking stick.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, the virtual talking stick. We call it an amulet here. Oh no, a talisman.
A talisman. And then what's the calumet? Is a pipe.
Oh, the calumet. Right? Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
that
yeah. The calumet and the talisman.
Calumet.
Yeah, so this idea of, and I don't know, I don't want to be the guy to pick on people, to naysay anybody, but I want to know the truth, and I want to know, I want to know it now. Somebody's drinking ice. I can hear.
I know, huh?
Got a
Aaron.
mop with
Aaron.
ice.
Aaron.
Is that Fanta and Cheetos?
Busted.
Fanta and Cheetos.
Hot
Is
Cheetos.
that from
Oh,
the
yeah.
freezer ice, or is that
Yeah.
is that downtown ice?
No, that's freezer ice, man.
That's freezer ice. Okay,
I
kind of tastes like onions a little bit. Oh, you didn't go to Wilson's yet?
I didn't go to
Got a little
Wilson's yet.
hint of onion or whatever you had last night on the ice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what is it? What is it, man? What is this fascination with the circle?
It's round. Circles roll.
It's round.
It's wholeness.
Infinity.
It's in wholeness. It's infinity.
Starts with
Yeah.
Oh no, here we
It's
go.
eternity.
Here we
Yeah.
go. You know,
Yeah.
to be honest, I don't think about it all that much. Like when I do my research, I feel like I just do my work. I'm not sitting there with a conscious decision to say, like, let's make sure that this research is circular or this research is holistic. I just kind of I feel like I ask the question, I test the question, and then I give you my results. Regardless of how that, I don't feel like it's, at least, I don't know. I don't want to feel like it's a circle or there's this conscious decision to do that. I don't know, because
It's
cheesy.
weird, man. I know.
Man, it's
Well,
fake, man. I'm going to straight up say it is fake.
There's no circle. It's more of an oval.
Oh.
Show me. Yeah. No. So I mean, Marty,
Spherical.
what where have you been? Where have you been on this subject? And you're right in the thick of academics right now. What is your experience with the sacred circle?
Well, I'm taking the easy route, so just kidding.
Why not saying nothing?
I'm just gonna say I agree or something.
I don't know, just to stay on topic, I guess. If you just look at what's around in nature, like I was just thinking while you guys were talking, you guys were going on and on and on, and I'm just kidding.
Tell us how
Just
you
kidding.
really feel.
Let me finish my thought.
Everybody.
So, as you guys were talking, I just kept thinking, like, what's like when you're just in nature, and here I go with the metaphors and romantic views of us. If you're out in nature alone and you're looking around, can you find a circle? Where can you find a perfect circle. You can't. Oh, a pop can should not be in nature, so that's off the list. There's circles there. There's nothing printed like off a piece of paper that's something printed like a circle. So what are you looking for? Well, the sun, that's a circle. Perfect circle. And what else? Maybe the moon
Trees.
once a month. And
What kind of trees are circles?
Trees. There's no perfect circles in a tree.
There's
trust me.
That's true. That's true.
So I mean,
Marty's on one today.
Debunked.
No, it's kind of sucks. This is what's really sucks about it, though, guys. Talking about this stuff, as soon as you go to like, you're trying to boil it down and get to the truth, and you say something simple like that, you're out in nature and you're looking for a circle. Well, automatically you're, like Salena said, your voice even changes. You go out in nature alone and you look around. What do you see? A lot of irregular shapes and things that don't have symmetry, but there is symmetry that does exist. But where is the perfect circle? Where is the circle of life my grandfather talks about? There it is. Look in the sky. The sun comes every day. Every morning the sun says good morning. And it's a perfect circle every time. You can trust that. 24 hours. Every 24 hours we'll see the sun again.
Keep going, man. Keep going. This is good.
So Marty's gonna get a job because of this, and then no one will hire us because they're all cynical, and then Marty will do that, and then somebody will hire him.
Ooh, that guy's traditional.
Yeah, Marty's very traditional.
Pretty tradish there.
That's how they roll up in the Upper Peninsula, the Crow Res.
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, anybody else want to chime in on that? What are your thoughts? Let me know.
So I have a thought. Then what? So the circle does get brought up a lot, right? Like Marty's saying, you're saying it does get brought up a lot.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. But which culture doesn't acknowledge the circle?
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. I mean, probably every language has a word for a circle. Right?
Yeah.
We could probably look into that.
Probably.
Yeah. I don't know.
We could look into that. Let's Wikipedia that. Let's start a Wikipedia page for the circle. That's probably one of them. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
It's a picture of Charmaine.
Okay, yeah. Let's hear
Sarah's
it.
talking. Sarah's talking.
Let's hear it, Sarah.
Oh gosh, thanks guys.
No?
I like being yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just hilarious listening to this dialogue here.
Comedy aside, tell us your deepest thoughts.
Jeez, my deepest thoughts. Okay, so when I think of a circle, obviously there's all kinds of like things that you can imagine that operate in a circular pattern, and we're kind of poking fun at some of them, but things like seasons and days and things like that. I get it. But part of me also thinks, like, when I think of a circle, I think of all things being connected, and I can't quite do the old Indian voice like you guys can. But like, it's all about like the relations, right? Like everything on that, like a circle can't really escape itself on a circle, and so everything is all in that together. And yeah, I don't know. That's all
Sacred ways.
Out.
If we thought like that, that'd be exhausting. All things are connected. Oh man! I'm trying to do this podcast, and it's going to have this detrimental effect on my children in the future. And what am I? If we thought like that all the time, imagine the overload we'd have of everything's connected. Well, we can acknowledge that,
must be why my brain hurts.
And I think the circle has that same connotation. Like, oh man, we got to hear about the circle again.
Oh Christ!
Yeah, I don't want to talk about a circle no more.
What do you want to talk about then? What shape instead?
No. I was saying that like out of character, like sitting in a conference somewhere.
He doesn't want to talk about sacred ways.
Yeah. I
Give me
think
that
it's
good old
easy.
linear line.
Yeah, it's easy. It's an easy thing to say, that this represents a circle, or I'm going to put it in a circle. It's easy to associate that with the modern conception of indigenous thought these days. But I challenge that, and I think, well, no, I don't. Maybe, but I don't think so. I think there's some pretty straightforward thinking. I think there's some research results that we can gain that are fairly straightforward.
So what would be the backlash for saying this in the world of indigenous research by us saying that maybe this whole circle idea is kind of a crock? Or
Yeah, yeah, no,
I mean,
I get it.
what would does that hurt Indian research, indigenous
I-
research? Sorry, does that hurt? So does the critique of this idea hurt indigenous research as a discipline, not as a philosophy, but as a discipline?
Right,
Because
right.
I would say indigenous research method in that form is kind of marketable.
It is.
Very much. Mhm.
It's
It is.
branded.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
It is branded.
I said it first. I think.
So let me let you in on a little bit of the research that I'm going down, and it's about this talking circle, and I'm coming to find out that it comes from a few sources, and some of the recent literature that specifically talks about the talking circle, one of the main references are these self-help cards inspired by native philosophies. It's not peer reviewed, not that it has to be, but it's just a self-help deck. And another one references a website that is no longer operational. But I did find this very interesting reference to a gal who had a vision about this talking circle. But this is modern, so this is not in the ancient past. This is very modern. She had a vision of this way, and she started doing it. And that
Now, is it-
seems, yeah. Go ahead.
does it is what time period are you talking about? The kind of the is it the 70s, the 1970s when all this is kind of being
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean that fits with the era, right?
It
Mhm.
does. It really does. Yeah.
I didn't mean
So
to interrupt you. Sorry.
no, I was concluding. So anything like past 1980, the early or the late 70s, you don't find a lot of reference to the talking circle, or even a lot of in relationship to the circle. Even if you dive into the archives of ethnographers, doing work back in the early 1900s, I mean, you don't get a lot of that talk about the power of the circle or things happening in a circle. I don't know. Would you agree or disagree on it?
I haven't run into it.
Yeah. Pretty rare, pretty rare. So I don't know, it's even if it's a newer thing, that's fine. But that's a great question. What do we gain from, I guess, and what we're doing is kind of discrediting, or I guess questioning that idea as a mode of thought in indigenous research. I don't know what we gain. I know my motivation. What is yours, Aaron?
Oh, what's my motivation?
Yeah, what motivates you, man?
Weather.
Weather. If it rains, I go inside. What you mean?
No, I don't know what you mean. What's my motivation for research?
No, about talking about
Questioning.
like
Questioning
yeah,
the
trying to
circle.
combat this
What's
idea,
your
this
motivation?
romantic version of the
I
circle.
think as a disclaimer, I think criticism and being a hater are two different things,
Yes.
right? And
Let's make that clear.
I'm not a hater on anyone trying to further the discipline of indigenous research, but I do, when you said maybe it doesn't have to be peer reviewed, I think it should. I think
Yeah, by the
anything
right
I
peers.
touch, anything I touch needs to be looked at by people that I respect, and I'm willing to take their criticism. But as far as like what asking this question, it's really like, because I'm a believer, man. Like, I believe in Indigenous perspectives, right? But I want to do it right. I don't have the answer. I don't have, I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I would like to challenge the existing idea, because if you challenge it and it comes out on the other side, then it's right. Then I'm willing to say, all right, whatever, I'll go with it then, you know?
Yeah.
But
Give me
I'm
the
not
talking
afraid of
stick. All right, I'm with it.
I'm not afraid of criticism.
Yeah.
Like any human, though, I don't like it, but that doesn't mean I won't accept it. You know, I'll take my ball and go home and pout for a little bit, but then I'll make the changes, you know?
Right. That's
but-
real important.
Yeah. So
That is.
just like we were talking about this telling of these deeds, you know, these guys would tell these deeds, but they would only tell deeds that could be corroborated. Somebody has to
Right.
say, someone had to have said, yeah, I saw him. I saw this happen, you know, or I saw her do that. You know, you don't just talk about something. I was alone in a coulee, and, you know, it's like nobody cares then.
Yeah.
You know, and really
Right.
back then they were pretty harsh about this stuff. They're like, nobody saw it. You can't use it, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
So I would want my research to kind of have the same effect. So that's why when these ideas of the talking circle, the medicine wheel, all of this stuff come up, I'm not against them. They seem to be built on flimsy foundations. And I could be wrong. But
yeah. Right. Yeah. So what about anybody else on the team here? What's your, do you have the same motivation as we do? I mean, I think I and Aaron's are kind of clear, but what about you guys?
I think my motivation is to help other Indian students be able to feel comfortable using their ways of knowing, or even that term ways of knowing sounds romanticized, but you know, just to be able to teach from our perspective and have it just be, that's, you know, they're without romanticism, without doubt, without, I don't know, all this stuff that exploitation. Just to be able to talk about it and teach it and get excited about it, and not have to have all these layers of, I'm going to say the word colonialism on it, you know, like, because that's what half of this stuff is shame around that. Like, I don't know.
Right.
And I'm probably sound a little Amish right now, but that's my motivation, is so that I can teach it. So I can teach how to research from our perspectives, and for it to be just to be.
Yeah. Now, did you say Amish or Amish?
I almost said that.
Aim-ish.
Oh, AIM.
Yeah, American Indian Movement.
Okay, let's be clear on that.
Acronym.
I don't know if you got a desire to
I got confused.
churn your own butter.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That was my prior accent.
Cool. Well, I mean, that's important. I mean, really, if you think about it, and I this is what I think, you know, we're always in this transition stage of trying to figure this out. So to think we're in some final stage, like we've got it figured out, that'd be crazy to say that. So things are always kind of in flux, you know. And I think trying to understand all this stuff that these people did back in the 80s and 90s, who really did a lot of hard work, you know, to bring back this cultural way that we can now talk about and dog on a little bit. I was kidding, but you know, that was important work. That was important work to help us to advance even further. So if we're not continuing to challenge ourselves and to challenge our peers to be better with that idea of, just like in this Syulm, to acknowledge those are doing good work, to pull those ones up that maybe need some help, to be unafraid, to be brave enough to challenge each other. That's where the work's got to get. It has to be done. I don't know how many people you're around that you have to be a little bit sensitive to their feelings, and you really can't express yourself and get into a healthy debate about certain topics because of that. And I think that's really counterproductive. But what so the rest of the team, what's your motivation? What do we got going on here? I don't know if we align or not.
Man, I'm with Salena as you know, still learning and educating myself about this kind of stuff. I feel like it's very important to know the basics, and to just know, to be able to teach it and to learn it. And then there comes another layer of identifying what's cliche, and what's exploiting it. I feel like there's another level of that. And I feel like sometimes like insecure when I'm like hearing you guys talk and I'm like, oh man, I'm such an amateur. I'm such a rookie. What do they mean? But then at the same time, it just gets me going. And it's like, I'm learning it and being able to identify the difference of what's authentic and what's really just marketing. And
Right.
I don't know. So that's where I kind of feel on it. You guys are pretty advanced in it. And so I'm glad that this is my beginning starting point, is to hear you guys discuss these issues. So
We're not, though.
You are, though.
I mean, like, we're not.
Yeah,
really.
non-expert
No.
expert.
It's in. No, actually, just Salena and Sean Dean are the experts.
All the doctors in the
What?
house.
Doctors.
Well, Sarah, she's got her doctorate.
Oh, Sarah, are you a doctor?
Excuse me. Yeah, Dr. Hoagland.
Yeah,
Sarah's probably more of
You
a
can
doctor
call me
than I
that from
am.
here on out, Aaron.
but
Thanks.
to
Jeez.
defend Sarah's, she works for the feds, so she's still like working class. She's still like among the people.
Blue
you know?
collar. Yeah. Among the people.
Yeah.
I'm not all high and mighty in my white tower.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Why is
Yeah,
the tower going to be white?
Oh,
it is.
God.
Metaphor. Metaphorical.
Zing.
Metaphorical.
Oh, sorry. Hey, can I
So,
say what my
yes.
motivation is?
Yeah, you were next. Let's go. Dr.
Thanks.
Hoagland, thank you
So,
for your service.
The thing that Thanks. The thing that keeps cycling over my head is it, and I guess it's reflected in our mission and what we're trying to do with the centers. We're trying to advance our understanding. We're not trying to get to the point of where we will fully understand. And if anything, I think that if we're striving for that full, perfect, like, I don't know, idealistic level of understanding, it's almost like selfish. So I think we're always constantly going to be in this like learning mode, no matter where we're at.
Yeah.
So that's my motivation. Is I fully admit I'm definitely not an expert on any of this stuff, and it's fun to learn. It's fun to be critiqued and tested, and have that check-in and feedback and stuff. But yeah, I don't think that there's this like magical full enlightenment that we're striving for. It's just advancing our understanding.
Yes.
No, you're right. And actually, I'll add to what you're saying because I'm Aaron and I likes to talk.
Oh, God.
I would say in the past, Indigenous research has always been to justify Indigenous views in research. So it was the audience was the non-Indian. That's always it always seems to be that way. I think for what we're doing and the questions we're asking, it's for Indian people researching Indian ideas and topics for Indian people.
Yes.
So it's a different kind of question.
Totally.
And some of those methodologies won't work because the audience is different.
Yeah.
And so I think what Sarah's saying, it actually is kind of the foundation of it. It's this idea that we're willing to ask the question, I don't think that question's ever really been asked by Indian people. It's like, how do we study ourselves,
Right.
Oh.
Right. No, I think you're right. And that's why, we talk about the witness as being a really important concept in a traditional way of thought. We can sit here and rattle off about all our crazy ideas, but if we never get any sort of validation from, the community or whoever, it's just hollow. I think anyway. I want to hear from my neighbor if they ever tune in or if we ever have a chat about what they think. And that's really important. That's why I like to hear these motivations. What's driving you? Are we way off? And I would hope you'd be honest and tell us, yeah, Aaron does talk too much, or
he's
or
just doing it
whatever.
for the money.
Hey guys, I already said that part.
Right.
It's on record.
Right. It's on record. Well, anybody else? What are your thoughts? I mean, this is a.
I want to hear from Marty. I want to hear from Marty.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. Marty, go.
Oh, so my motivation behind what is it again? Researching this idea about circles and stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Is that what I'm supposed to talk about? You guys,
Did you leave the
were
room?
talking on and on.
Well, okay, so we're talking about some things. We're bringing in some heat. We're saying, the stuff that's traditionally thought of in a more modern way is maybe a little bit contrary to what we're thinking. Is that the message I'm sending? Yes,
I'm not sure.
I think so. And what is it? Are you motivated to challenge or take that on?
Well, something Aaron said triggered something in me. Not in a bad way, but
Triggered.
I got triggered again.
Like you're gonna turn into a werewolf or something?
Yeah,
I'm changing because Aaron said
Aware scout.
Well, he said, we never really have thought about until these Indigenous research methodology topics came up. We never thought about like how do we as Indigenous people research and talk about our own people, and that's exactly where my research has taken me. I'm making documentaries of various lengths about Native people, about primarily my own people, the Crow people, and I'm doing it in a way. I'm saying I'm making a documentary about this topic, but I'm from this culture and I know a little bit about this. I know the people I'm interviewing, and I feel like I can present our culture better than, say, an outsider from the culture. So I'm taking this idea about creating documentaries from an Indigenous film standpoint, and applying that to visual anthropology. So this idea of questioning the way Indigenous research has begun, or ideas about all these different metaphors of Native people, just doing the research itself, we're kind of just figuring out what's real or what's true or what's can apply for some people and not some other tribe, and I'm rambling again. Somebody was supposed to stop me.
No, you're good, man.
It was good.
Yeah, keep going.
It was so good.
Yeah, see, and then I'm a pretty since you encouraged me, I am a big victim, if you can call it that, of the imposter syndrome. And I don't know, I bet a lot of Indigenous people feel like that because we're going about being Indigenous in what a lot of people see as a non-Indigenous way of living in academia. And so it's like either way we're seen as an imposter, or it could be all within us. And I may be just talking about the way I feel, but I bet there's
I feel that way.
Yeah,
I do too.
Yeah, I knew it.
Which probably should be another podcast topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk about sacred ways.
So creepy.
It's so
It is
ugly.
It is
So ugly. Quit being ugly.
100 years ago, my grandfather told me about sacred ways.
So is Aaron not going to be in a role in any of your documentaries, Marty? I'm guessing.
Aaron's in every one of them.
I'm the voice. I'm the
With
voice.
that voice.
In every single one.
I think I am, ain't I? Except for
Just break the news, Marty. He's just tell him
we're a
now.
tag team, man. We're like Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels in 1992 WrestleMania.
Oh, God.
The Rockers. That was a Rockers reference.
Well, I think we're getting close to exhausting probably what remaining listeners we might have.
Anyone out there?
Yeah, so let's wrap this up, I think we got some interesting things to talk about. We're getting some good commentary from our listeners. and we're getting some good reviews from our main funder, the National Science Foundation. And
Thanks,
so we
NSF.
have to acknowledge that.
And how many downloads are we at?
Couple
we're
hundred,
at
I think, like 200.
220 or so last I checked, or close to
Boom.
that. Yeah.
That doesn't
Yeah,
count
so-
just people who are going to the website and listening to it too. That's not counting. That doesn't count as a download.
No, it can't. That counts.
Does
that
it?
Counts. Anytime the feed gets started for any length of time, it counts as a download. So somebody could listen for a minute and say, "This is garbage." It still counts.
You just took all the coolness out of that now.
I know. Well, I know.
Gosh.
Wah, wah.
But those that are hanging on to the end,
we thank
we
you.
thank you.
Yeah,
And don't
thank
forget
you.
to visit our Patreon page. And
do we
Buy a
have
shirt.
does our podcast or we have an email for the IRC? So what is it?
it's irc@skc.edu.
So if you have comments, if you have ideas for podcasts, if you have hate for us, whatever,
Send 'em
it's
in.
all
Love.
good. We want
IRC@skc.edu.
criticism. We want critiques. Yeah, we
Yes.
want it all, man.
We want it all. And I've been getting comments on Twitter and on Facebook. So those are also ways you can chime in. But yeah,
And
let's wrap it up.
Let us know your favorite pizza topping too.
Yeah, we want to know your favorite
Morels.
pizza topping.
No, we want to know your
Yeah.
favorite podcaster.
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh.
Don't do that.
Oh.
Don't do
Probably
that.
Camry will probably
you're
win
gonna-
because she doesn't say anything stupid.
I'd vote for Cameo.
Yeah.
It's like a safe bet. You're like, we'll vote for Cammy
Let's go with the
because
safe one.
everything she says means something and it's not idiotic.
Mhm.
Well, anybody have any last comments on this topic? The metaphor, the overuse of, the mischaracterization of. Go. Take us home. How about Salena, since she's our guest, our visiting scholar, recently adorned, or what do you call it? Christened with a doctorate from the University of Montana. What do you call it?
She was recently is it consecrated?
Consecrated.
Isn't that a thing?
Consecrated a doctor. Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
Consecrated. Yeah, you could use that.
I have
Christened.
no idea. Christened.
Con-
They all don't sound very
Capsized
nice.
as a
Divinely prompted.
divinely.
She's been capsized. Divinely prompted, yeah. Capsized as a doctor. And
Capsized?
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Capsized.
That sounds like she got pushed over.
That's a stowaway. She's been stowawayed. No.
I get it.
It sounds
Graduation
like-
stone.
It sounds like
Graduation stone?
it sounds like my soul was taken, and that's how it kind of feels too right now.
That's part of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah. Yes, locked away in a library.
That's what doctors happen. That's why me and Cammy and Brenda aren't doing it. We're not doing it.
You don't want to be entrapped.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
encased in several. Anyway, okay. I'm sorry. I'm getting carried away. Okay, Salena.
Gosh, I feel like I'm supposed to say something like extraordinary, and all I have is how important these conversations are to keep having. I think Sarah or Camia, one of them, said it very well in just continuing to have these conversations, finding the balance and doing them appropriately so that we can just keep contributing to this field of Indigenous research.
Excellent.
Boom.
Excellent. Boom. Outro coming in.
That's our closing.
Thank you for joining us on this episode. And to learn more, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at IRCSKC. You can find us also on Facebook and YouTube by searching SKC Indigenous Research Center. You can also visit our website at irc.skc.edu. Don't forget to join us next time as we continue our discussions on Indigenous research, Indigenous research methodologies, and Indigenous worldviews.